Welcome to the Valley of Outlaws podcast, a podcast for those looking to take the road less trodden, and a podcast for those seeking more. You are Outlaw number 19. It's honestly a real honour to have you on today. I was looking through my research when I first came across you, and I think I bought your first EP in 2000. I think, keep in mind, I bought 11th of May 2015, and I've been obsessed with that EP ever since. Still listen to it on repeat regularly, and so this is honestly something which I'm so grateful, so happy to do, and really keen to have this conversation with you and kind of understand how you got into music and everything. So thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, man. I think you must have been one of the first. May 2015, that'd have been like before it even hits digital streaming. It would have just been a CD.
And I got you on iTunes, the up and coming iTunes.
Wow.
Yeah. You were like one to watch on iTunes. I remember the singer-songwriter section, and I listened to Sleep by Rivers, and I was like, bloody hell, this hooked me. And I just listened to it deep, and then I came across Vernis Keep as well, as I said to you before, and I'm like, God, this guy, the voice of an angel.
That's awesome, bro.
No, I so love it. Anyway, I always ask everybody the first question, the same question, which is, in your own words, who are you, what do you do, and why do you do what you do?
That's a big one. I'm a singer-songwriter. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm an environmental enthusiast. I'm a surfer. I do what I do because I have to. I need to. There's no other way for me to kind of function in this life without it. I need that expression, and I think regardless of how my career's gone, I would still do what I do, and not just for me, but for the people around me. And I think it's important that I live in that, as authentically as I possibly can. And there's a whole story as to why that I do what I do. And I guess maybe we can go into that conversation a bit later rather than hit you straight up with that. But but in short, that's who I am, and that's what I do.
And when was your realization that this was just the only route for you? Like, how long did it take for you to realize that?
It took a long time, man. Like, I've been playing music for the majority of my life. I think I started playing drums when I was 7 or 8, and I had a family band with my father and my 2 sisters, and we'd jam in the lounge room, and we just always had instruments around. So I grew up around music, and my dad was a musician, and I picked up guitar probably when I was like 15, and I stepped away from the Slipknot and Korn and the heavy metal I was listening to, and I got introduced to the likes of Ben Harper and Jack Johnson and Xavier Rudd, and at that same kind of time, I started surfing as well around that 13, 14 age, and so even though I loved music for a long time and I always played music, I never really considered myself a writer or even consider music as a career, or to even make money out of music, because even though my father was a musician and he was quite successful at a point in his career, he was quite jaded by the music industry, I think, as you can be. Like, I think a lot of musicians end up becoming jaded with the music industry, because it can be, it's a pretty gnarly industry. There's no lying, like there's no kind of not lying. There's no really like way to fluff it up. You can't sugarcoat it. Like, it just, when young artists kind of ask me about, I was like, it's tough. It's a tough industry to be in, and you got to go in with the right reasons. It can't just be because you want to be successful. That'll never work. And so anyway, it wasn't until I was about 21 that I really started like being like, okay, I want to do music full time. I want to, I don't want to. I was a carpenter at the time, and I hit a really, really big low point.
Okay.
As I think as you do when you're lacking purpose in your life.
Yeah.
And I was lacking a lot of purpose. Uh, I was just about to become a father, which I guess was a point of where I think a lot of people was going to come. But I was 21 years of age, so I was also just shitting myself and didn't know. I had no idea what fatherhood was going to be. So,
Yeah.
um, so about 3 months out from my son Isaiah being born, he was born about 3 weeks from my 21st birthday,
Wow.
and and I made a kind of pact with him before he was born that I wasn't going to be the man that I was, and that was kind of depressed and a very miserable
Hmm.
man because I wasn't following what I really wanted to follow, and that was music.
Mm.
And so I quit my job as a chippy, and I went out and started trying to get gigs in Byron Bay, here in Byron Bay. I got turned down a lot. I got a gig and then I got fired from that gig because they just didn't. That I think their words were like, your vibe doesn't suit." And so straight off the bat, there was a lot of rejection,
Yeah.
and so I actually went crawling back to my job as a carpenter because I couldn't make any money,
Yeah.
and at the time we were living in the garage of my friend's house, and
Yeah.
we had a newborn baby. We had a borrowed Daihatsu Charade, 1996 model Daihatsu Charade that we borrowed off my partner's father, and so times are pretty grim, and but I'd never felt more aligned than when I
Mm.
chose to do music, and that was a very pivotal point for me. That I was like, even though we're probably in one of the toughest moments in my life, I also felt like I was the happiest, which was a really
Mm.
bizarre feeling.
What did music enable you to do, or how did it enable you to really be yourself, I guess, as well?
I I guess it's any form of expression, right? Uh, I don't know if I really was myself. I think for many years I was just intimidating the artists that I loved,
Okay.
um, and I think intimidation. That's not the right word. Imitation,
Imitating.
not imitating, not intimidation. Is a really good way to refine who you are as an artist. You kind of take little bits of all the people that you listen to and absolutely love, and you kind of make up your own version of yourself and what you love about that music. And there was certain elements that I loved about people's music. I don't know whether you get this, but there'll be a song where you're listening to it and kind of the whole song goes by, but there's one lyric or one
Hmm.
sentence in that song
Hmm.
that just fucking kills you, and it's
Hmm.
so good. And so I just wanted to do that. I just chased that. I wanted to be that for someone. I wanted to write that one line
Amazing.
that made you choke up and made you tear up, or just brought an overwhelming feeling, whatever that feeling is. And so yeah, I kind of chased that. That's what I really wanted to become, is just an artist that could achieve that.
I love that. And who were some of your kind of like real artists you kind of like followed and kind of and copied initially? Then who were the main people? I know you said like Xavier Rudd and Jack Johnson.
I think initially when I first started playing guitar, it was Xavier Rudd, John Butler, Ben Harper, Pete Murray.
Yeah.
Those are the guys that I was learning their songs and singing their songs around
Yeah.
with my mates around a fire on the beach, and Donovan Frankenreiter, like those guys. So they really kind of shaped me at the beginning in terms of
Mm.
the acoustic folk music, singer songwriter stuff. But then there was always something missing for me. And
Okay.
I think when people listen to my music, they're like, oh yeah, well, I can kind of see that influence. But I think in terms of lyrically and melodically, I kind of step more into that uh, melancholy, that Ben Harper. I guess there's a little bit of soul R&B, a little bit of blues in
Mm.
there. So once I found Jeff Buckley and I really
Mm.
dove into Ben Harper stuff, and then I found Donny Hathaway, and then I started going down that R&B route, I really started to want to write music that was incredibly emotional. And that, going back to what I was saying before, is like I wanted to write some stuff that really expressed what was going inside of me. Uh,
Mm.
that kind of heaviness that I guess we all carry around from time to time.
Is that because were you kind of very like an openly emotional person, like a younger like child, or was it something which you held in, you couldn't kind of express emotion, and maybe music was a way for you to really express it in a way without you actually having to go one to one and speak to someone about it? Like, was it a release of that, or
Oh, absolutely. I grew up in a small
yeah,
country town in the 90s. Like there was no liberation of expressions for males there. Like it was,
yeah,
yeah, it was one of those things where I'd kept it inside. And although I'd kind of write in journals and stuff, but that
hmm
was, I don't think I was ever that honest with myself, even within in a journal, because I was afraid. I was afraid of being who I am. And now coming to the age that I am now, and going through what I've gone through, I realize that I am a very emotional guy.
mm
Like I just
mm.
am, and I express it all the time. And so it, music saved me in that way. It allowed me,
Yeah,
because I went down some pretty terrible roads when I was a kid, and I ended up in a lot of trouble. And I grew up in really low socioeconomic. We had no money and
okay,
growing up, and so I found myself in some pretty bad crowds. And I guess one thing that I could say to give an idea of where I was heading is that probably 80% of my mates ended up dead or in prison. And
wow,
so they were the kind of people that I was hanging out with the majority of my childhood and adolescence. And so when I was able to really channel through music, it brought me on a different path.
and did I read right? You left home at 16
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
moved away. Was part of the reason to kind of put yourself in a completely different environment as well, or was that just a choice, or just that was a thing to do?
I think home didn't feel home didn't feel like home. Like it didn't feel that safe, or it it felt like it was a wiser decision to leave the town that I was in and leave the home that I was in, because I kind of realized that there wasn't going to be much for me there if I had
Mm,
stayed. And
mm.
so yeah, I made the choice. In saying that, also my partner, who I'm now we've been with for 19 years, we got together when we were 14, and
Wow.
she comes from a very broken um, family as well, and so we kind of found each other, and we were like, let's get the fuck out of here before basically. So
Wow.
we left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting because in a very dissimilar way, I have similar feelings of like my parents split up when I was 17, 18, and I was at boarding school at that time. And for me, I was in my final year of boarding school, and when it was an all boys boarding school in England, and when you're there, it's so intense, so full on. But my new home became my school. I couldn't resonate with my actual home, with my parents being it, because it felt like such a divided place at that time. Even though it was like
Mm.
an amicable divorce, and there was no resonation of going back there. And this was like your safety hub. My safety hub became kind of everything away from it, and kind of like the unknown. So I completely get that, because actually sometimes it's an element of safety. You don't want to go into that hurt and into that trouble, but sometimes also it's I guess it's a desire to also build something better as well, and kind of chase, I guess, a dream for yourself, which is why we kind of explore that route of leaving and trying to move away and protect ourselves a little bit. But it's super interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, even though it was sad in a way, and it was kind of heartbreaking,
Yeah.
just because of where my family was at that time, and my parents and my siblings. And so there was that element of sadness, but at the same time, I think it helped shape me to
Mm,
become a musician later on, because it was that uncomfortable place that I had to go to. It was so uncomfortable to have to leave and try to recreate my life. It was, I guess, there's when you do stuff like that early on, or when you do anything that's really uncomfortable in your life, you end up conditioning yourself to be able to do harder things later on, right?
mm,
And so there was elements of that that I kind of recognized when I was going into becoming a musician, which was one of the most
Yeah.
uncomfortable times. Um, so yeah, so even though it sucked, I'm kind of thankful for it.
Yeah, yeah. Are you the kind of person who can go into like a tough time and you can go in with the mindset that you're able to get through it, or are you someone who just goes into it and you kind of only look back and go, God, that was really tough. How did I get through that kind of thing? Like, can you like intentionally go, right, this is my next mountain to climb, and I'm stepping step by step, and whatever comes my way is going to be what it is, and I'm going to survive.
Yeah, I guess a lot of the time I don't even really recognize how bad things are until afterwards.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, Again, I think that's like a conditioning thing because I came from so little and times were so tough as a teenager and adolescence in my home and my household, and everything from schooling to fights to getting locked up to
Mm.
robbing petrol stations to like it was
Wow.
I was in that was just life, and then it
Mm.
wasn't until I removed myself from that that I was
Mm.
like, fuck, I was in a bad place and I was
Mm.
going to be in an even worse place. And but I my partner and I, we even from 14 years of age, were like, we just keep trying to make our life better, however that looks, and we just keep just taking that step, one step at a time, to kind of trudge through whatever we're going through. But yeah, I've never been one to be like, all right, I'm trying to get to this point. It was just like, I just
Yeah.
know that things can get better, and so you
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
keep moving forward no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I
Wow.
really don't have, I really don't make many plans. I just know that I can make things better.
Love that. I love that. And I know you said your dad was a musician as well. So like, how influential was he as a person to you, but also a musician, and I guess kind of shaping the musician you wanted to become?
Yeah, as a person, not at all. Like, I think look. Our relationship's pretty great now.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of work on it, kind of forced by me and wanting to
Good on
heal.
you.
Yeah, wanting to heal those kind of father wounds.
Mm.
Um, but I kind of make it as like a point to be like, what would my father do in this situation? Do the complete opposite. So being a father now, it's like if I see anything that kind of reminds me of my dad or anything that he did, I'm just
Yeah.
like, I run 1,000 miles away from it and try to reverse it and do it differently. Yeah, and in no way am I saying that I'm perfect. Hell no.
Yeah.
Like I'm making plenty of mistakes as a father, as a human, as a partner, as a friend. Um, but I I'm kind of in a weird way thankful for my dad's terrible fathering and mistakes because it gives me a pivotal point. Like it's like, all right, don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, but as a musician, like we had very and still do have very different tastes in music, and I don't
Hmm.
think he ever would have got into folk music in any way, shape, or form if it wasn't for his son playing it. And
Yeah.
but having music around the house and always having records playing
Mm.
and just having instruments and him always, 2-3 nights a week he'd have all his mates over and they'd get hell stones, just smoking lots of weed and taking acid, and they'd just jam until like 3 in the morning. And even though they were completely wasted, there's still fond memories for me because I'd go
Mm.
out there and I'd probably get passively stoned from all their bongs they were smoking, but I would I remember just hanging around and watching them jam, and that was a
Yeah.
pretty cool thing to witness. And then when I eventually started playing guitar, I was able to jam with them, and yeah, so there's fond memories of that. So I think him just being the way that he was, and he was quite open with music, where he's just like it was always there. That definitely helped me kind of later in life not kind of judge myself too much on
Yeah.
music too, which is important. He was quite
Yeah.
good at that. He was just kind of just happy that people were playing music rather than judging music too
Yeah.
critically.
And how kind of free was he and your mum to um the future you wanted to have? Like, how did they say, "Oh, Carl, you need to go and try and get a job and have some safety and bring some security in," or did they say, "No, follow your dreams and be who you want to be? Like, what was kind of the line they went down?
My dad, it's a weird thing because he was an artist, he was a musician. He made quite a good living out of his art,
Hmm.
visual art, painting.
Hmm.
Um, but really didn't encourage us to follow the arts. And so he was very much like, go get a trade and, get yourself secure. And then, you just have your little hobby on the side, but you don't try to make that into a
Yeah.
career.
Yeah.
So that's sense why I think that's why it really took me a long time to do music properly, is like chase it as an actual dream, because I spent so many years doing trades. Like I was an electrician, and then I went to being a concreter, and then I was a plumber, and then went to carpentry, and so I did a bunch of trades for years, and then eventually I was like, fuck this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
You
you know,
chase plan B is what I remember my dad said to me, because I was an artist, always wanted to paint and stuff like that, and wanted to do it at university. He's like, no, you got to go and do a career which is going to give you some security. So I went and studied architecture for 3 years. But what I didn't realize was, by accepting that, I was accepting following a plan B. And okay, it's
mhm.
opened up many skills and I've learned a lot of things now, but it's a mentality which you develop of like, I'll have safety first and then I'll follow the dream, rather than I'll follow the dream and get safety from that dream once it happens. And it's actually really worrying, like how easy that is to put on people without realizing of like, actually, if you have like an intention, something to go and do something, you should go and explore that first before going for the security, because you just never know what's going to happen with it.
Yeah,
So again, I get that completely. Like the security of going and having a job, it's like that world we live in. This kind of like, you need to have money to survive, kind of thing. Okay, yes, that is true essentially, but you also need to be happy fundamentally, don't you, as well?
yeah. Well, that's right. So what's the point? What is the point of money if you're very unhappy?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I mean on that, it's what was I going to say? I had a point that you when you were talking, but I forgot my point now. Never
That's okay.
mind.
That's okay. Well, if it comes back, let me know. I want to get back to that point of kind of like the jumping early into the career. So you left the trades to try and pursue music, and then you went back to it.
Oh
What
wait,
was that?
that's what I was going to say
Okay. Okay. Tell
about the
me.
plan B, which is I think
Yeah.
this is a good point to make to anyone that listens to this, is that when you create this plan B, you always think of that plan B, right? I've had so many friends that just never did their art or never followed their dreams because they had a good career.
Mm,
And for them to leave their $1,500, $2,000 a week and go to a $500 a week chasing their dream, they're like, you've set yourself up for failure almost, because you can't kind of come back from that kind of money, especially when you have a family and stuff. And
yeah.
so when you when you chase that plan B and you get that and you make in all this money, to go actually chase your dream is even harder.
Yeah.
It's a way tougher situation to be in, I think. And so if you just, and that
100%.
was kind of like with me, I was like, I just went all in. I had a kid, I quit my job and chased my dream all at the same time. And I was like, the necessity to make it work was the highest motivation, because I
Mm,
was relentless.
mm,
And people often ask me, like, how did you get the success that you've had? And I was like, I literally had to. I
mm,
had to make that success, because
mm,
otherwise my newborn child and my partner weren't going to have somewhere to sleep and weren't going to have
mm.
food. And so it's a very important thing,
Yeah.
because it's motivation.
And so what exactly do you mean by relentless? What were you doing each day to try and make this work early on then, in these early stages?
I mean, I just wouldn't take no for an answer. I mean, when that first gig, that official gig that I was getting paid for, said I'm not the right vibe, I was just like, okay, went back, like learned some different songs. At this
Yeah.
point, I was just basically playing covers, and then I just went back and just like, give me another chance,
Yeah.
until eventually, like,
Yeah.
oh fuck, yeah, okay, we got no one tonight. Come in, we're not paying you the full amount. We're only going to pay you $50. I was like, sweet, and then
Yeah.
prove myself. And then from there, it's just like I just ask people all the time. And then once I was doing the gig scene, I started finding busking, and then I was on
Yeah.
the street every night, and I was the first one there. Like there was other buskers, but I'll be the first one set up playing, and I'll be the last one leaving. And I would just play and play and play until there's no one left to play to,
Mm,
and uh, and that was kind of my thing. Is just like I just knew that if I was the hardest working musician, then I would eventually, one, get good because you're constantly practicing,
mm,
and two is you just my thing, and my thing still is turning people into fans by just playing to them, is
Mm,
connecting with them, and that's still how I look at my music career. Is like
mm,
I haven't had the big commercial success and big number ones around the world and stuff, but I've played to probably I've played to enough people to then have audiences everywhere I go in the world,
mm.
which is wild, but it's important.
Oh yeah. Are you quite competitive? And the only reason I asked this because you said something about you were there longer hours than anybody else, and you played to improve. And it reminded me when I was at university of we had in architecture you're split into different units, so you just have like a theme of design. And my goal always was, how can I be the best in this group? How can I be better? Well, I'm going to stay longer in the studio. I'm going to take all the good ideas and make them, and then evolve them to mine. And then I'm going to be as unique as possible and really confident and try and just outblast my peers basically and outlast them and be someone who was willing to listen and learn. Like, was that a similar kind of mindset for you, whereas you kind of like eyed up the other buskers and you went, right, I'm going to be better than you, I'm going to outlast you?
Yeah, I think I think there was an element of competitiveness there, but music's a hard one to be competitive in because it's so
Of
subjective.
course. Yeah, of course, of course.
Um, but the one thing I did know is I was a hard worker, and I always
Yeah,
have been. And like
yeah.
in terms of even when I was electrician or a chippy or a labourer, I would always have work in the town that I worked in because I was a really good worker, and every boss
Okay.
loved me. And
Yeah.
I knew that about myself. I knew that it's like I can fucking work, and I can
Mm,
work hard. And
mm.
so to be the best wasn't on my radar because I was like every other creative out there where it's like you have imposter syndrome and everyone's
Yeah,
better than you. You're like, I don't
yeah,
know
yeah.
how, like I'm a terrible artist. I had that. I'd look at every other busker out there. I was like, they're way better than me.
Hmm.
So I never kind of felt like I was going to get better than them, but I just knew I could work harder.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. And that's kind of part of my upbringing is I had a lot of grit from that. I didn't get anything on a silver platter. I had to work for everything that I've ever made.
Yeah.
I've never been given any head start or I mean, the one things that I hate is people go, man, you got lucky. And it's like, fuck that. It's
Bloody
like
hell.
when preparation meets opportunity, that
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
that is what happened. Is I was grinding
yeah,
so hard and I was playing so much that eventually someone was going to notice me. That was
yeah.
that was it.
And luck goes out the window when you're in that position. It isn't, as you said, it isn't about luck. You're just ready.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know how many in Byron Bay. I'm sure there was probably not hundreds, but at least 20, 30 different record labels, A&R managers that would have walked past me in that town and
Mm.
big artists. And, it's one of those things where they would have walked past and go like, that's terrible, like good luck to that guy. But then
Yeah.
eventually someone did walk past. And it was someone that knew someone that was a manager
Mm.
and it kind of just snowballed from there. I mean, my support's with Xavier Rudd. It's like he literally
Mm.
walked past me on the streets in 2018, and
Really?
and he was like, "Wow, come on tour with me," and that was it. So,
Wow. Wow.
but if he'd seen me, 4 or 5
Yeah.
years prior to that, he probably would have walked
Yeah.
straight past and been like, good luck to the fella.
It's like
Um,
that. It's like that video of Ed Sheeran where he first wrote his own song. Have you seen that? He played it on the
yeah,
chat show. It's so
yeah,
funny. It's like,
yeah,
I wasn't good, guys. Watch this. And we're like, oh God, you weren't good, Ed.
yeah. Yeah, I don't think, and that goes for so many artists. It's like the breakout artists. It's like
Mm,
that artist has been going at it for many, many
yeah.
years.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. At what point did you start writing your own music as well? And then what point were you happy with the kind of the songs you started to write?
Still not happy with them.
Really? In what way?
One of the best things my dad ever taught me is this. The one thing he ever said to me that helped me with my art was this, and it's art is never finished; it's abandoned. And
Oh God.
yeah,
Okay, I like that.
and uh, and I've kind of lived by that because I've never been happy with a song.
Okay.
I've never
Yeah.
been like, that's finished. I've been like, oh, that's like I feel pretty good. That's a pretty well written song. But when I'm in the studio and I'm recording it and trying to finesse it, and I'm, like I'll literally be like sending it off for mastering and be like, oh, I just want to change that lyric. I just wanted to. So yeah, I don't think I've ever been completely happy with a song in my
So
life.
what's the element where you're happy to release it then? What point does it have to get to?
Just abandoning it is in terms of just being
Okay,
like,
it's just like that. I spent enough time on this now.
yeah, exactly. It's
Okay.
like that. It's just got to go out.
Wow.
I mean, I guess it kind of, it's weird. It becomes harder the more success that you have.
Of course.
Where,
There's more eyes on you, isn't there?
yeah, like the first EP was kind of like, yeah, whatever. There's like they recorded songs and that's fine, even if they're just from, my kids or something when they're older. Be like,
Yeah.
hey, I recorded an album one day.
Yeah.
And then the more success that you get, it just gets harder and harder to actually say it's finished and let's release it and give it to the world, because you've got waiting ears waiting to hear what you've been working on,
Yeah.
and that's pretty hard.
Yeah. No, it's a really interesting topic, this as well, because I just this morning released a blog post from writing about the second episode I did of this podcast, where this guy said, Shalom said, the end is never the end, and you got to learn to love the journey. We're all on the journey. And I was like, I re-listened to it and I thought about this as the point of maybe an entrepreneur or something. Like, our life is the journey. Like, it doesn't end until we die. So I completely understand this kind of creative element of never going to be happy, because actually it might have been a good bit of art you created from one moment in time, but you've evolved so much through that process as well, that the way you look at it changes, and the way you kind of see yourself has changed. That person who originally created that art at the start, like, we're always evolving, always changing, that we can never be satisfied with where we are now. We just have to keep going and keep trying to learn through the journey and just enjoy the journey of life, I guess. So I guess it resonates a little bit with that in terms of songwriting for you. If you were happy with what you've written, you're, well, I can't beat this. I can't go
Yeah,
beyond this. I've written the best I've ever written. Whereas
that's right.
you're changing the mindset to go, no, there's better to come. And I think it was Chris Martin who said with their Head Full of Dreams album, it took them 5 or 6 albums to get to that point where we're actually happy with every song on the album and the flow of it, and to do the world tour with that. And up till then, they were awarded so many things for the albums up to them, but at that, that they internally as a band weren't happy at that point until they'd written that album, which kind of completed their story for the people they wanted to be at that moment in time. So
Yeah,
it's so interesting.
it's important. I mean, I always say to my kids, don't aim for perfection, aim for progression. Because I just think, like, if you're aiming for perfection, you're just always unhappy, right? But if you progress that little bit more, which is kind of one thing that I look at my songs, it's like I've progressed as a songwriter. I'm not completely happy with it, but I've definitely progressed as a songwriter, and so that there's a little bit of contentment within that.
Mm, mm. And a lot of people I've spoken to who've, I guess, in the art stuff like that, have talked to me about moments of kind of isolation while following their dreams. Like, you kind of, in some ways, can feel so separated from the rest of the world because you're so focused on this and trying to build. Like, have you experienced that? Is that something which you've come across, or have you always had the support of your partner and family to help you?
I've always had the support of my partner, which has been amazing.
Mm,
But yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm one of those people that need to create in a studio by myself
mm,
with no one else around, and that does it does feel quite isolating sometimes, especially when I'm focusing on an album.
mm,
I'm a pretty extroverted guy.
mm.
I really enjoy being social, and
Yeah,
not just with randoms, but with friends and stuff. I just love
of
being
course.
around friends and family. And so it's kind of unnatural for me to seclude myself. It always feels weird when I'm walking into my studio.
Mm,
It just doesn't quite feel right. And then
mm,
then once I'm writing, I kind of get lost, and then I feel like, whoa, I've been away from people for too long, and I feel really weird. So yeah, I mean, there's an element of that for sure, um, but having small children and writing my first couple of albums was a blessing, because I couldn't do that. I couldn't lock
yeah,
myself in a studio. I had to look after my kids. And so
yeah.
a lot of the songs I wrote was with, like, all my phone recordings of my song ideas usually have my kids talking and screaming and yelling in them, and it's it's really cool.
That's
Uh,
fantastic.
yeah, because
I love that.
most of them, like I wrote songs. I just always, when I was cooking dinner and making snacks and stuff for the kids, I'd always
Hmm.
have a guitar over my shoulder, and I'd write lyrics and song progressions in between cooking
Mm,
and making sure toddlers didn't kill themselves. So
mm,
yeah, so that was kind of nice. And I never really had a music studio like I do now.
mhm,
And so there is parts of me sometimes where I think maybe I should go back to writing an album like that. Because
mm,
you're always trying to think like, what worked last time? Why was that
mm,
album this
mm,
successful? Why did I write a song that did that well?
mm,
And so sometimes I think like maybe I need to do that. Maybe I just
mm.
need to get out of the studio. And that's the other thing with getting more successful is you just financially you make more money. And so I'm able to have a big studio now
Yeah,
and
yeah,
have a
yeah,
piano and recording gear. And I'm
yeah,
like, well, that's not how I wrote my other things. I was living in a
yeah, yeah.
tiny little shoebox with one bedroom with two children, and I just wrote
Mm,
them in the middle of the chaos. And
yeah, yeah.
so
There's a
yeah,
naivety to it, isn't there?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I think I think you think that you need to have this. Like, there's part of you that's like, oh, that's what you do. That's the next progression as you start becoming more successful is you you set up a studio in your house. And
Yeah,
it's fucking dumb.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
just
No, I agree. No, I completely get that. I get that. What was it like performing the first song you ever wrote to the public? Like, how did you feel? Or what were you a lot more nervous at that point because it was something personal to you rather than doing covers?
well, I never really announced it
Okay.
because I was just doing cover songs,
Yeah.
and then I would just slip in an original.
Okay.
I'd never like be like, "Hey guys, this is an original song," and
Okay. Okay. So you didn't
um,
put the pressure on you then?
yeah, and I mean that was kind of my soft way of playing my songs because, like I spent years playing in pubs and clubs where no one
Yeah.
listened. They were just
Yeah. Yeah.
the footy was
Yeah.
still playing behind me,
Yeah.
and so I was just really just background music, and it was kind of nice. I would play my original songs, and it didn't matter if I played a Mumford and Sons cover on an original song. Neither of them got claps, so it's like, oh well, doesn't really matter. Um, so yeah, that was a kind of nice way to soft release
Yeah.
songs in a way,
Yeah.
or at least play them to the public. And then once I got an attentive crowd, uh, yeah, I mean there was elements of daunting, but uh, I felt like I had something to say as well.
Mm,
I
mm.
was I probably felt like I had more to say back then than I do now, maybe because I'm
Yeah.
older and I realize that I'm probably dumber than I thought, a lot dumber than I gave myself credit for before. Um, uh, but but yeah, I I used to really and still do enjoy again like hoping I'm creating that moment for someone where
Mm,
you've written a song and when you've got an attentive crowd and you can play it with the heart and the emotion that you wrote it about in that moment again.
mm,
And like this is a weird thing to say, but I fucking love it when I make my audience cry. Like
mm,
that's what I'm trying to do. Is I'm trying to break down the armor and the walls that music does for people. It
mm,
allows them to express, and I'm thankful that I have songwriting in my life for that reason. Is because a lot of people don't have that form of expression or any form of expression, and so their way of releasing is listening to a song that resonates with them and gives them permission and the capacity to feel that feeling that they
mm.
need to express. And
Yeah.
and so yeah, once I kind of found out that I had the potential of doing that, then I was hooked.
Mm.
That was kind of it. It was less about me and more about giving it to the world and allowing them to feel it.
Well, I mean, I could say you were very successful because keep in mind, I had on loop during my worst times of my life. I would just listen to it nonstop. Like it was one of those albums and EPs, which honestly, I had it saved at its own playlist, like all your songs,
Oh,
which I loved. I would just listen to it because I could connect so much to the emotion you were trying to create, man. It was so kind of pure for me. And it got to that point where I just got so used to every song, I could just drift away in my mind as well and have you playing in the background as
mm,
this kind of like consistent vibrational support just to level me. I can't really explain it any other way than that. But it's been so powerful to me, your music, and especially that first EP, because of the times when I first discovered it, the times I was going through, it was it was really, and again, seeing you live, I think, was it 2018 or 19 you first came to London?
Yeah, maybe 18. Yeah.
I think I went to that concert. I saw you there, and it was great. And it was like 4 years of just listening to the album and seeing you in real life. It was such like an emotional connection to that kind of journey I'd been on, listening to who I'd been, how I'd grown through it. It's yeah. I mean, I still feel part of that journey now. And when I saw you last year as well,
Wow.
it was just another step. It was so it's helped me so much. I can't really explain it. But Sleep by Rivers again was just one of my favorites. And
Wow, man.
yeah, it's touched me for
It's
sure.
yeah, and that is why I love it.
Yeah.
It's it's when I hear things like that, when I hear people express moments like that in their life where my music had helped them. There's honestly not many greater feelings than that.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it makes everything I've gone through to be who I am and to write the music and to get and the way that I was able to get my music out there to people like yourself, it makes it all worth it.
100%.
Because in no way was it easy.
Exactly, but it's shaped you to who you are. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I'm thankful for it. I'm absolutely thankful for every moment, and I have no regrets in the things and the way I've lived my life. But like I thank you. It really does mean a lot, and it never gets old for me ever when people express what my music has done and got them through.
Yeah, no, well, I'm very grateful. And what was it like the first time people started singing your songs back to you?
So mind blowing. It was the weirdest moment ever. I remember I did my first ever tour. Like, I mean, I played some backyards with one of my best pals, Ziggy Alberts.
Yes,
and
I love Ziggy.
Yeah, so we've been very good friends for a very long time now, and we kind of put like a bit of a tour together in Western Australia, and that was the first time that I had people singing my lyrics as we did this show in a little cafe in a place called Cottesloe in Western Australia.
Okay.
And I just remember it so vividly. I remember playing Sleep by Rivers, and the whole, like, probably would have been about 12 people that knew it, but they're all just kind of singing this chorus to this song. And I just remember like having a moment in that, just being like, why are these people singing this song that I wrote alone in a little studio?
Yeah.
Like it was the most bizarre feeling. And I mean, it doesn't, even this far on in my career and have the amount of people that do sing my lyrics, it's still, I don't know if any artist really gets used to that. I mean, we play on it and we enjoy it and we get people to sing it because it's a beautiful moment when everyone's singing in unison, and we've created this unified feeling and emotion within a room. But man, I don't think any artist would be like, yeah, who cares? That's just
Yeah, no, of course. Of course. I think sometimes, as you said, that first moment is almost a moment of shock, because I guess you played so long to so many people and they don't know the song, and then suddenly people singing, you go, oh Christ. Like,
yeah.
this is
Well,
connected.
I mean, I pretty much went from pretty much straight from like no one clapping or even listening to me for 3-4 years to all of a sudden people so attentive and then singing my lyrics back to me. It was really bizarre. Even the fact that people were listening was a weird scenario. So yeah, it was definitely a moment of shock, but also a moment of like, this is what I'm doing it for.
Yeah. And once you got to that point, did you start to dream bigger, or was the dream so big when you started that it's never changed, or has it evolved along the journey?
I had one goal.
Okay.
We have a little local newspaper here called The Echo. It gets distributed to about, I don't know, 10,000 people within the Shire that we live.
Nice.
I just wanted my name in the gig guide. That was my
Yeah,
goal.
I love
That's the
that.
one and the only goal I've ever had for my music. And I got in the gig guide to play like the Northern, which is like one of the pubs here in Byron Bay.
Yeah.
That's as far as I ever dreamt,
Wow.
which is
Wow.
really weird. Everything, all I knew is I just wanted to play music,
Okay.
but I never was like I want to succeed or have sell out
Yeah.
shows or um. So yeah, man, it's weird because I'm surrounded by a lot of entrepreneurs and
Mm,
mindset people
mm,
and so they always kind of ask me like, did you have this dream? Did you have a vision board? Did you write it down
mm,
every day? Did you have like a goal of like a venue you wanted to sell out? And I was like, nah.
mm. Yeah,
I
definitely.
literally just knew I wanted to play music to people that would listen. And that was my main
Yeah.
goal. It's like I didn't really, and I still don't really care about how many people it is.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
obviously financially to support my family through it's an amazing thing. But if if I if I had to go back to playing to 50 people in a backyard again, like that's I'm still very happy. It's like 50 people that are fully attentive and taking in everything you're saying. Uh, to comparatively to say like 5,000 people that are just there for like a one hit song that you wrote, it's like nah,
Yeah.
fuck
Yeah.
that. I'll take the 50
Yeah.
people that like
Yeah.
want to listen to music. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so no, it's only really recently that I've started really trying to hone in on what I want to succeed because
Mm,
I've achieved more than I've ever dreamed of,
mm,
ever dreamed of.
mm.
Well, way beyond anything I could ever even think of.
Wow.
Um, like
What does that feel like?
it's it's weird, man. It's almost like it hasn't really landed. Like
Really?
I'm still kind of almost numb to it. The fact that I just the last show that I did last year, you see me in the UK, and
Yeah.
I brought my whole family, and
Yeah.
we travelled around Europe and the UK and Ireland for 2 months,
Yeah.
whilst I did shows like that. If you told me that when I was a troubled youth, at 16, living out of a garage, there's absolutely no way in hell I would have believed you because
Mm,
there's just from what I've come from to be able to
mm,
achieve something like that is insane.
mm, mm.
Um, and so yeah, man, it's still I still don't even know what the feeling is yet because I'm
Okay.
just kind of like it's almost like I'm still just like I can't believe it happened.
I love that.
uh,
It's like you're just following your intuition and your soul, really, weren't you? I guess in that sense, and like that kind of truest chase to who you wanted to be. I guess in that sense, without having that end kind of like vision. It's more of a feeling you're chasing, isn't it?
yeah, well, I guess it's like in a I'm quite a logical guy. I'm not very imaginative like
Hmm.
do this kind of mystique thing. My
Mm,
partner's good at that. She loves just
mm,
going off.
mm.
Um, so for me, I was like, I need to tour Europe again. It's been a
Yeah,
few years. I love the audiences over there. I've got to get there. To go away to Europe, you want to spend a fair bit of time over there. And I was like, I don't want to be away from my family.
yeah,
I love them too much. I love having them around. So I was like, well, logically, I just got to bring them with me. So I was like,
yeah.
just make that happen. However you're going to make that happen, just do it. Um, but getting back to now, kind of visualizing where I want to take my
Mm,
career because I can see I've really hit a glass ceiling,
okay.
and and I've kind of in many ways everything that I've achieved has almost imploded in on me where I'm like, you didn't even think of trying to do that. Like, who are you and why do you deserve the whole imposter
Oh wow,
thing really got to me
wow.
where I just didn't feel like I deserved any of it. And, I felt like I'd tricked people. There was a feeling of like, oh, how did I
Yeah,
trick everyone? How did I trick these people to buy tickets? Like, how did I manipulate them? Like, I
yeah,
just, it didn't feel like they were there for my music, and I'd somehow manipulated all these people, and weirdly, like this has just happened recently,
Wow.
and so I really hit like a bizarre place where I was like, why? How could I ever do anything more than what I've done? Like maybe this
Yeah.
is this like I literally was like, I think I just need to stop music now, like get out, which
Yeah.
is really bizarre.
Wow. Wait,
Um,
what was the trigger to that?
I haven't really put my finger on it, but
Okay.
if I try to really think about it right now, like I think after the European trip with the family and that tour being quite successful, I I think after that I was like, how could I ever do more than that? How could I ever top that? Um, and so I think that might have been the trigger. And then I kind of thought of my whole career and how it's all kind of happened, and I felt like really uneasy about it.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it's really weird, but kind of realizing this as this happens to many creatives, and speaking with a lot of good
Mm.
friends of mine and that are also artists and successful on all different levels. Um, I had a chat. I was with one of my brother-in-law, who's like a mindset coach, Jai
Mm-hmm.
Long, and
Mm-hmm.
amazing podcaster. He's got a podcast called Make Your Break,
Cool.
and he's kind of made a lot of money out of just kind of recreating his own mindset. And
Yeah.
and I was having a lunch with him and Ziggy Alberts.
Yeah.
And Ziggy had also kind of hit this wall recently, so we were kind of talking about it. And my brother-in-law was like, "Well, there's this thing that a lot of successful people do is where you're actually got to flip the ceiling. I was like, you hit this ceiling, you got to flip it and then build from that up."
Mm. Mm.
And we were just like, "That's so interesting. I've never
Mm.
thought about it that way."
Mm.
One, identifying that you've hit this glass ceiling, and but then being able to be like, "Well, that's just the beginning."
Yeah.
And Ziggy said this thing to me where it was like, "Why not?" He just said, "Why not?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "What do you mean by this?" And he just said, "Why not? Why can't you be more successful? Why
Yeah.
can't you have more? Why can't you have bigger shows? Why can't you be the healthiest you've ever been? Why can't you
Mm.
have the best relationship you've ever had?" And like I was literally sitting there like, yeah, why can't I? Why
Mm.
can't I? Who is to tell me other than myself as to why I can't have those things? There's no reason. And so that just kind of set me on this tangent of just like, all right, it's time to get stuck in.
Yes. I love that. It actually made me think a lot about. I don't know if you listen to Kevin Hart on Joe Rogan's podcast.
No, I don't think I've listened to that one.
It's one of my favorite ever podcasts ever. A lot of people find Kevin Hart the small, annoying little man, but listening to his mindset is fascinating. He
Mm,
talks about chapters in a book. You have your chapters of the book, and it seems like the glass ceiling is just like the end of the chapter, and you make it the floor, and as you start your new chapter. But he talks about playing the game, the levels of the game. We'll all go through life. We're all playing a game. He goes, I live in my life, and I go, I want new levels. I've got to the top. I need you to create more levels for me to get further and further and further. And he's got this relentless attitude to just trying to improve himself and get better and make his opportunities. It's fascinating. I really would recommend listening to them if you have the time, or anybody listening. Some of my
yeah.
favorite ever podcasts. He did 2 with Joe Rogan. And it's just an absolute bombshell of the kind of mindset and how to push yourself further, and just the perspective you could have on your life in terms of actually taking it less serious and recognizing we're all in some sort of real world simulation game kind of thing. We're the makers of our own future, and we are the ones to kind of take control. Like our mind can't is the only thing which is going to limit us, and it shouldn't limit us from being the best version we want to be.
Mm,
It's brilliant. It's really, really brilliant.
yeah, man, I'll check it out for sure.
I
Yeah,
really
I love podcasts like that, ones that kind
mm,
of get you to start thinking about your own thoughts and the way that you think of
mm,
yourself, and how much we limit ourselves.
mm.
Um, and so, yeah, that's cool.
What's your what at this period of time? What was the kind of the biggest limiting belief? Was it just that you've peaked? like you've got to the highest point, or was it just like a doubt you can go further? What
Yeah, I guess, like a both. There was a doubt that like, how could I go any further? And there was also to be like, oh, that's it. Like,
mm,
I've peaked as an artist.
mm,
What else have I got to give? Um, it's like I've done it. Like that's it.
mm,
Now, you just tapers off, and you eventually just, go to producing records that no one listens to anymore. Um, so yeah, I guess there was that for sure. Like there was that inside me, um, which is just a silly thought.
yeah,
Such
yeah,
a silly thought. And I mean, that's kind of been proven over and over again by plenty of artists where they've released three, four, five albums, and then eventually they release another, their sixth album, and it just goes bonkers, and they
yeah.
have even more success than they ever had. Um, so yeah, so I guess there was that. I felt like I'd
Yeah.
peaked, and there was like, where do I go from there?
Mm. Do you know what I've noticed as well with some of the posts you've done on Instagram? You're kind of like you've also taken it more seriously in the way you perform your songs and stuff. Like the lighting seems to be a lot more professional. You're kind of set up the whole kind of creating of the space which you're actually recording on is
Mm,
another level. I honestly noticed it like 2 weeks ago. I was like, Jesus, okay, he's taking that. This has gone up a level in terms of the way you're portraying yourself as well to the world. So I don't know if that's the new you and the new Carl Lionhart in this new space, right? Everything now is going to be raised up a level, but I've noticed it 100% in that kind of
yeah.
way. And yeah, in the way you're portraying yourself.
Oh, for sure, man. Like I just kind of like recently was like, nah, fuck that. I've beaten
Mm,
the odds so many times
mm,
before.
mm,
Why would I stop now?
mm,
Other than,
mm.
like, other than just like, if it's a pure fact that I love it.
Yeah.
Um, I almost was like, this is a challenge for me. To me, to be a better human and to be a better father and be a better partner is like, I need to push
Mm,
myself to see how far I can take this,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
I can show my children to be like, nah, you can go
Yeah.
harder. You can push yourself further than you think. And so yeah, there's definitely that part of me is like, all right, I'm ready to get back into this now.
Yeah.
I mean, it took a few months. Like I've had a lot of help. I mean, that's been a beautiful part. Is I started training really hard. I started
Mm,
got myself in a really good routine. I started
mm,
journaling a lot again. I started being quite strict with my music playing, where I would at least spend 60 minutes at least, which sounds like a little amount, but when you got a life to do
yeah.
everything else around it,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like 60 minutes that could turn into 2 to 3 hours if I find something. But
Mm,
every single day you spend 60 minutes playing music, and between journaling, ice bath, breath work, training my body, training my mind, writing down my visions, writing down my goals, having conversations with my partner every day
mm,
about the things that we want to achieve in our life and in our relationship and with our children. And yeah, man, these things all together, it's the first time in my life where I've really felt like I have a plan to be more successful, which is
mm.
exciting because I had the success that I had on a whim, and I was like, oh,
Oh,
this is interesting. I wonder what kind of success I could create if I really focused on it and I
mm,
used my hardworking ethic that I've kind of
yeah.
always had, but I planned it
Yeah. It's
rather
with
than just,
intention.
yeah, it's with intention.
Mm,
Um,
no, I love that.
yeah, man. So it's exciting. It's really exciting.
How important is maintaining kind of like a healthy mental health space for you in terms of writing music? Like, do you find that you write your best songs when you're in a clearest mind, or when you're emotional? Do you write better songs? If you're trying to write music which is to connect with people, do you have to write from a place of emotion, or can you write from a place of quite like a stability and kind of like a calm kind of mind?
Yeah, I kind of prefer to write from more of like a stable mind and
Yeah.
reflect on
Okay.
the things I've gone through and I've processed,
Yeah.
and then I write on them. Um, that's how I've done it in the past.
Okay.
But again, with this conversation that I'd had with Zig, is his latest album that he's recording at the moment. I don't know if he's allowed to say that. I assume he is. He'll be right. Uh, he was like, dude, I wrote from like in the present. Like when I sat down to write, I'd be like, what is going on inside me right now? All the turbulent things, and you just write exactly how he felt. And I
mm,
was like, whoa, I've never thought to write like that.
mm.
I've always been like, I need to process whatever that is and then I'll write about it later.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I'm kind of now playing with that of just like coming down here in my 60-minute block and being like, all right, how do I feel? Almost like a journal, but
Yeah.
then turning it into a song.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting, man. It's a really different way for me to write,
Okay.
um, but it seems to be fruitful at the moment.
Yeah. That's very good.
Yeah.
Are you a short term or long term thinker as well?
Well, like I've kind of explained, I've never
Mm,
really had a plan. I've never really
mm,
had like a
mm,
like a long term
mm-hmm,
plan. All I know is that I want to make my life better. So
mm-hmm,
maybe that's a long term thinker, I
yeah.
guess. Maybe that's like always knowing that I want to make my life better. So just doing whatever feels like needs to be done to make
Mm,
sure that I can raise the bar that little bit higher in my life. And that's how
mm-hmm,
I've always lived it. I've always just been like, okay, how can I make my life a little bit
mm,
better? How can
mm.
I make my mental health better, my physical health? And so that's, yeah, I guess that's long term thinking.
Yeah, yeah. No, but as I said, it's a bit of both. And I've asked this question to people before. They go, somewhere in the middle, because like sometimes you have short term goals, but you have like a long term idea of how you want to feel and kind of the direction you want to go in.
Mm,
So there's a blend. I don't think there's any there's no right or wrong answer to it.
yeah.
It's just interesting because some people don't even process it either. They haven't even thought about it in that kind of sense, I guess. So it's just I find it interesting just to understand um, how people actually build up their layers of thinking and intention towards the way they want to go and who they want to be. It's quite interesting to learn from, I think.
Yeah. Well, for me, I don't think I ever really set like a dead, like
Mm,
a hard goal.
mm,
It's kind of like say for instance, piano. I really wanted to learn piano. Kind of have all my life.
mm,
Um, didn't until COVID hit, and
mm,
I was like, I have some time.
mm,
I want to learn piano, so I went and bought a piano. I put it in my studio, and I just all I knew was in my head is I wanted to learn piano, and then I ended up writing like 3 or 4 songs on it for the album, and it ended up being now part of my performance where I play piano pretty much most places that
mm.
I go. So it's
Amazing.
yeah, but it was never like by this time I want to be this good.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah,
get that. I
so it's
get
more of
that.
the process.
Yeah, yeah. Was COVID quite an important period as well for you? Like, did that shape you? Because I remember seeing your Instagram lives. I always used to say hello from England.
It was
But
cool, man. Like, COVID was a weird time. It
mm,
was a strange
mm,
time for everyone. I mean,
mm,
especially for the arts. But I did find some beauty within the first novelty kind of few months. I was like, this is
mm,
really cool, like the live Instagram things, and
mm,
people were joining from all around the world, and it
mm.
kind of felt like, oh, we're connecting. And then after 6 months, it was like, this feels empty.
Yeah,
um,
yeah. False.
yeah, exactly. It was this
No,
false
I get
sense
you.
of connection. So yeah, in terms of it being a pivotal point, I don't think so. Like I I knew it made me appreciate what I did and live music again, like a lot
Mm,
more than I think I ever had because it was removed and I wasn't able to
yeah,
do it.
yeah.
And it really kind of reignited me as to how much I love performing for people and connecting with people and being able to sing songs that mean something to someone.
Mm, mm. No, I love that. All right,
Mm.
last couple of questions. Um, how important is it for you to surround yourself with like-minded people and people who are going to inspire you?
It's like almost one of the most important parts of my life and my career. And not even if it's about music, but just
Mm,
people that want to look after themselves, people that want to make
mm,
better choices for themselves, for their partners, for their
mm,
children, for their community, for their friends. It's so important. And I think with every relationship, there's a transaction, right? No matter how you look at it, there's a transaction in a relationship, and I much prefer to have those be healthy transactions.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, I'm 33 years old now. It's like I don't have time for shitty people in my life. It's like, they're there and that's fine and they can exist, but I just don't have time for it, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
give much time to people that I don't need to anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really quite particular with who and how I spend my time, because time is ultimately the one thing that we have and are losing quickly. And so I'd rather spend it with the people and the humans that really make you feel great. And the ones that, you have a connection with. And I think as you get older, I don't know how old you are. How old are you, Will?
29.
29. Almost hit the dirty 30s.
Mate, this September is scary.
Man, 30 is the best. Like,
I keep hearing this.
dude, as soon as I hit 30, it's just like something just clicked. I was like,
Yeah.
It's almost like you take a big sigh. It's just like you just get to relax for once in your life.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I just the older you get, and especially when I hit 30, I was like, the people that I want to be around matter so much.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. It's crazy how influential the people you surround yourself with are. Like they can literally be the catalyst to whether or not you achieve a goal or have a happier life or be successful in whatever field you're being in. And that's super important.
Yeah, as I say, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and it's
There you go.
I remind people that a lot. I love it because it's it makes you start thinking about curating your life a lot more.
Yeah, man, you got to curate your life and your friends.
Yeah,
because they have a huge effect on you.
Mm.
Which kind of it kind of feels like an asshole thing to say, but once you get over 30,
yeah, who gives a shit?
Fuck it.
Okay, what's the one lesson that you kind of want to teach your children about life and being happy?
There's 2 kind of parts to this. I believe it's incredibly important for them to learn to sacrifice, and learn to have that grit to be able to shoulder or feel the gravity of what life can be and what you can handle. I think it's important for them to feel that uncomfortableness and be able to navigate their way through it. And I say this because I really want them to chase their dreams. I don't want them to think about, their security and their money. And I say that in a pretty light way, because like we were saying at the start of the podcast, it's like, yes, you need money. You need a certain amount of shelter. You need a certain amount of security in your life. But in saying that is you can, and I want them, and I think just through living my life with them and seeing them me just be an artist and the way that I've done it is probably helpful, but allowing them to know that if they can achieve all those things if they're willing to work for them. And both my children play music, and one of my eldest son is actually a really amazing, and I don't say this lightly, he's actually a really incredible anime drawer. He draws.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he's created this YouTube account, and he loads up these videos, and they get way more views than my videos do. So he's, he's obviously killing it. Yeah, like I think he put one up yesterday and it's already got like 11,000 views and like
Oh my
300
God.
shares. I know, it's like,
Is there a collaboration coming forward, a music video which is going to be created by your son?
oh, 100%.
It's got to be done, hasn't it?
Yeah.
If not to reach a wider audience.
Yeah. No, I need to do more touring in Japan. So yeah, man, like
Wow.
I think it's really nice to see him really pushing and chasing for that.
Mm.
And one of my lights just died. Um,
It's okay.
it doesn't look as pretty anymore. Yeah, and him kind of seeing, because he's been there from the beginning. He's been there. Like I said, I chose music when he was born, and so I don't really know how much he remembers. But over the last kind of 3 or 4 years, he's now 12 years old. He's been on the road with me a lot, and he's seen how hard I work and what I do for a living and what it takes. And I think that's a really important element because it shows him, art isn't what I guess a lot of people romanticize an art career to be. It's and whatever kind of creative industry that is you actually have to work harder than you probably would at any other job. You don't just kind of like lock in at 9 o'clock and leave at 5 o'clock and leave everything at work. It's like you obsess over it and you just think about it and you work every living minute. So yeah, I try to really leave with them those two things where it's just like you need to be able to handle what life is going to throw at you, but you also need to have the lightness and the freedom and the heart to be able to chase your dreams.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. I love that. So powerful. Okay, final question. What are the keys to succeeding and following your dreams? To any budding musician out there, what's your one bit of advice apart from work really hard and sacrifice? What else?
There's so many things, but I would just say, like, don't write for anyone but yourself. The moment I start writing for someone or for something is the moments that I write my worst music. And I think, I wrote a whole EP. This is getting quite honest. I wrote a whole EP in that time of that self-doubt, and I delivered it to my record label, and they kindly just went, "That's terrible, and we're not going to release that."
Wow.
Because I was writing for. I wasn't writing for me because all I was thinking is like, I'm just doing my duty. I'm just getting it done. I'll write what I think people want to hear. I actually, what I was thinking? I was actually thinking this is what'll go good on Spotify algorithm playlists.
Really? Wow.
The record label will be happy because it'll just go on a bunch of like folk chill playlists that'll do well streaming wise, and they'll make their money and I'll make my money. And like when they turned it down, I was kind of like, it killed me at first. And then I went and had another listen to it and I was like, it's fucking terrible.
I love really the honesty, Kyle. I love the honesty.
So yeah, it's I think one of the most important thing is write for yourself. Write as if no one's ever going to listen to it. I think it's when you're the most honest and the most vulnerable in your music, and that's where the real magic comes out. That's when you're able to write something that's gonna hit somebody hard, because it's in that moment. It's like you're a human having a human experience. So you're gonna write about what millions of people are going through. But if you try to do it in a way that's copying someone or trying to appease to some kind of crowd or audience, and it's like you're gonna miss. That and be relentless.
I love that. Thank you so much. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for your time. Honestly, it's been a delight and so interesting talking to you, and a tick off my list of people I wanted to speak to. Honestly, you were one of the top because of the impact you've had on me with your music. So I'm super grateful. You're touring Australia at the moment, or have you just finished touring?
No, I haven't. I've got a tour coming up in May
Talking it.
in
Okay.
Australia. UK, Europe is on the cards again for this
Is
year.
it?
It
Is
is.
it? You're going to let me know when you're coming to London, yeah?
Of course, my man. So
Of
yeah, just trying to work out when we can fit that in. But
course.
yeah, lots of touring coming up this year, and lots of new music, which is exciting. Not shitty albums. Good luck.
I'm super excited to see how you build from this new glass foundation you've gone through. It's not it's the floor and the foundations. I can't wait to see where this goes. So, it's super exciting, and everybody can listen to Kyle on all kind of like music streaming channels. I'm sure he's on YouTube as well. Let's try and get him to have more streams than his son, and I'll get him on YouTube. But anyway,
Appreciate
thank you
you,
so
man.
much. I
No,
really
thank you
appreciate
for
it.
creating some great conversation, and
And
appreciate
thank you
what
so
you
much.
do, man.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Valley of Outlaws podcast. Please follow us across Spotify and YouTube and see all our latest news across our socials.